So today is January 10th, 2023. This is video number 10. And I've been busy making these bulkhead pieces. So I cut each one out. Basically, using a table saw. They're all nice and square. And then I coated each side of them with 4-ounce fiberglass and epoxy. So they're nice and rigid. I don't have a whole lot of long clamps, so then what I did was I basically used the clamps that I had and tabbed them in. So I just put a little blob of epoxy at the corners all the way down, and then after I did that, I was starting to glass them in here, so you can see this webbing in here. So if you're not familiar with this process, basically mix up some epoxy with, I'm using cotton fibers, makes like a thick paste, a little bit like mashed potatoes or somewhere between mashed potatoes and applesauce is good. You lay that in here with a tongue depressor or whatever you want to push it in there, and then wet the area out here out to where the tape is going to go. Put the fiberglass tape on there and then coat it over again with epoxy. So this is biaxial fiberglass tape. I like this sort of stuff because the biaxial stuff takes the curve much better. So biaxially meaning that the threads run diagonally, so they'll bend over a corner or in this case like into a little corner more easily. And then the plywood and everything, its strength is fore and aft and vertical. That's the way that all the grains are running. So I'd like to have some diagonal stuff in here. I just think that's good from a structural point of view. So things have been going pretty well. I did run into one issue, which was kind of funny. Took me a while to figure out what on earth was going on. But when I got back here, I needed to make a piece that would fit in here that I could then use on the front of that keel piece to make sure that everything was in alignment, and that part of the aft keel part would come right into this and butt up against these pieces here. And then when I actually go to join them, I will actually be putting a piece of plywood in here, and then that other piece will slide up and lock into here. So I'll put a piece of plywood in here, glue the plywood to this hull, and then as the aft hull comes in, it's like a tapered joint kind of thing when I go to put the two together, but that'll be a long time from now. So anyway, so I made this thing up for that purpose. So this drops nicely into the space, and then when I pulled it out, I looked at it and I'm like, that's weird. You probably can't tell in the camera view, but it doesn't look right. It looks a little cockeyed and a little crazy. And if you look here, looking at this again, it's hard to tell with the camera, but it looks as if this is not symmetrical. So I then checked it using an angle gauge and found out that yes, in fact, it was not symmetrical. So if I put it on one side and the other side, it did not line up properly. So it's like, okay, what is going on with that? So it turns out that I made a little error somewhere along the way. The two sheets were no longer lined up here at the bow. So to get the string to line down the center line nicely through all the different frames, this has to be cocked off a little bit to one side. So just pushing it this way a little bit, which means this piece here came forward about 3 millimeters or so. So in fact, all of these frames going down here are all like a little bit off. They're a little bit cocked slightly like this by just a few millimeters, which is like no big deal, but it did kind of weird me out when I looked at this piece and I was like, that just doesn't look right. So the only other thing that will affect is when I put the floor supports in here, they would be a little bit off because my idea was just to butt them up against this. So what I'll be doing is I'll just cut the hole slightly off and then put some filler in here just so that those are nice and straight across. It's not that big a deal, but when you're trying to find the location of something by measuring and you know, these things are sticking out a couple of feet past this keel piece, it's nice to know where that floor support is underneath that sheet of plywood. And if it's a little bit of an angle, you know, if it's 3 or 4 millimeters off here, it's going to be, you know, 12 millimeters off, 8-10 millimeters off out there someplace. So figured I'd just get that sorted out. The only other place that was a bit of an issue was this frame wasn't quite lined up. So I figured out that actually if I throw a couple of clamps on it here like this and tighten them up, that brought that back into alignment. And since these were only just tabbed in, it was able to just move over fairly easily. So I've actually over tightened them slightly because after I put the fiberglass in and finished this all off and released those clamps back off again, release the tension on it, there's obviously going to be a little bit of spring back. So I've over tightened them slightly so that when I release them, that should hopefully come in pretty close. It's awfully close anyway, only a millimeter or two off anyway. So no big deal. I'm probably obsessing over it. And normally I wouldn't obsess over something like this, except for that at some point I'm going to be mating that the aft keel piece to this forward piece. And at that point they're both going to have the decks on them and the sides of the boat and the whole deal. And the any error that I have in this now is just going to make that much more difficult, and I really don't want to be faced with a situation where something doesn't line up properly and I have to undo a bunch of stuff to fix it. So I'm trying to be super careful at this point in getting all that done. But I am very happy with the way it looks. It's going to be super solid with all of this in here, all that reinforcing everything. That's going to be really good. I love the idea that each of the batteries has got its own little compartment space here. I've come up with a really good idea. I'll be sharing that for how to support the batteries and protect them from water a little bit better in here, which we'll talk about at some point. And then the other thing that's really cool here is I've got I've got a total of 5 battery compartments. So this 1, 2, 3. This over here is the other half of 3, and this is 4 and 5. And so what that would allow me to do is adjust the boat's trim, so I can have all the batteries towards the back. If I need to have the bow come up a little bit more, or I can move all the batteries to the forward if I want to have the bow go down a little bit more, or if I want to just even it all out, I can just leave, put no batteries in this middle compartment, put half the batteries here and half the batteries in the 2 forward compartments, and so that's another option too. So basically, each one of these batteries is about 220 pounds, and so by moving them, being able to shift them around a few feet one way or the other, it'll help a lot with the boat's trim. There'll be a lot going on in the future with the layout of the boat and where the seats are and that sort of thing, that it's not really clear yet what exactly I'm going to do. So being able to shift the battery weight around to adjust the boat trim will be good, because for something to be super efficient like this, really don't want to be dragging the back end of the boat around in the water, making a hole in the water, having the bow up too high. And yet, when I go faster or want to get it up on a plane, I do need to have the weight shift towards the back, which it will naturally do as the boat accelerates. But if I need to shift it back more. If I don't want to be driving around with the bow down either. So this will allow me a lot of flexibility there. So I do have these are the bulkheads for the aft part here. I'm waiting to put these in. So I've got this sorted out and I've got that piece. Now that I've got that piece ready to go, I can put that in the front of this section, clamp that in place, and then install these. I think I might want to shave these down a little bit. I think that because what I'm looking for is to look down the hull. The bow part here is fairly straight. The two sides are fairly straight, and then it curves out so that there's this convex shape here, and then from a hydrodynamic point of view, I basically want this aft part to be fairly straight or even convex a little bit. For this low profile of a foil shape, that's probably not that important, but from a teardrop shape point of view, you want to have a more rounded part, and the maximum width of the teardrop about a third of the way back, and then you want it to taper back, and typical foil shapes would actually curve in a little bit here. So before I installed those, I wanted to get this piece in place so I know where I'm starting from, and then work my way back. And then my intention too, before I get too much farther along, is once I've got this all glassed up and set together, I'm going to take all the dimensions for all of these things. The side panels and all the other parts and stuff, I've got all the dimensions and everything for that, but this was the one part of the boat where I'm sort of freehanding it, figuring it out, and then finalizing it just before, obviously glued it all into place. So I don't, these dimensions are not really in my plan, so I want to write them all down. Each one of these is 500 millimeters between each one of these bulkhead pieces. So I got to get the dimensions from up here to where they start, and then the dimensions of each one of those. So somebody coming along who wants to do something similar or copy this can do that. All right, that's it for now. Thanks.